Good evening. Welcome to the latest live edition of the Last Bell Boxing. Bit of a special one tonight. We're going to do a bit of a review on the Leigh Wood versus Michael Conlan fight, which I'm sure you all agree, what a great fight. So joined tonight by Chris. Good evening, Chris.
Evening.
And joined by Andy as well. Good evening, Andy.
Evening, chaps.
So there's only one place to start tonight, isn't there? You know. So Andy, we'll come to you first. Give us your thoughts on the fight.
I tweeted out earlier on, it's the best fight I've ever seen live. Absolutely outstanding. Roller coaster, really, mate, of emotions. Obviously, completely staggered with round one. I thought Wood was setting his stall out. He took the centre of the ring. His jab was working well. He was feinting well, and then all of a sudden, whack. And I've watched it back since. That was a real heavy knockdown. And I actually think Wood was out cold. So to be able to, I mean, if the bell hadn't have gone for the round, I think we'd be talking about a completely different fight, because I don't think he knew where he was when he stood up. Luckily for him, the ref gave him the benefit of the doubt, probably because it was the end of the round, and thought he'd give him a minute, you know. And then I don't think he was right for another 3 rounds after that. I think he only started finding his feet in round 4. I gave him round 4. And I gave him round 6. And then I think it was either 9 or 10, and then one of 9 or 10 being a draw. But the rest of the rounds, you can't take anything away from Michael Conlan. Wow, what a performer. I mean, I never saw much of his amateur career, so for me, it was a little bit of an unknown quantity, whether he was going to be, or what he was going to be able to do at this level. But wow, the guy belongs at world level. There's no doubting about that. And as far as Leigh Wood goes, you're never going to find anyone with a heart like that in boxing again. To come back from what he took in round 1, I mean, it's shades of Frochgrove's one, isn't it? To come back from what he took, and obviously Conlan was timing him, especially in them earlier rounds when he wasn't really with it. I think come round 9 and 10, when Conlan was starting to slow down, that's when the fight really took off, and they were toe to toe, you know, trading body shots, trading hooks. Brilliant, just absolutely brilliant, outstanding fight. Obviously, thank God Michael Conlan's okay. I've seen a video with him now. You know, he's asking for the rematch, and you can't really blame him for that, because what an outstanding fight. So yeah, I had it. I had Wood. I gave Wood 3 rounds, and then 1 as a draw going into the 11th. So if you count the 11th as a 10-8, which the judges did, whether you agree with the shot being a shot or a slip, the fight was probably closer than we originally thought in the arena.
It was quite deceptive, wasn't it, Andy? Quite deceptive being in the crowd.
I'll be honest with you. I hold my hands up. I've watched it back since, and a lot of the shots that I thought Conlan was completely blocking were getting through. But from our vantage point, obviously being up in the gods in the arena, you can't see that clearly enough. I still think Conlan's defense was brilliant. He's a very, very, very switched on fighter. He knows what he's doing in the ring, and that knockdown in the first round was very cute, because he was going to the body, and Wood was parrying the body shot as he threw that left hook. So Wood didn't see that left hook coming. I think that's what knocked him out. So that's what knocked him down, because that shot got landed quite a lot in the fight, as we were saying, and and he took it for the most part every other time it landed because he saw it. He just didn't see that first one coming.
Chris, moving on to you. What were your highlights and your views on the fight?
Well, as you know, so first of all, for all the guys who are just joining us on the sidebar, all three of us were at the fight together, so we were able to discuss it as it was going on and see it unfold. And I think Andy's probably covered a lot of it there, actually, in terms of how the fight actually unfolded. I think if we start picking it back, though, one could say, did the kind of knockdown in round one, and it was heavy the way that Woods went down and his leg went underneath him. One wonders if that actually changed the fight for Conlon, because what he then did in round one and specifically round two as well was he started looking for power punches. And one thing which we never discussed really in any of our build-up was Michael Conlon going for power punches and going for shots which were going to actually knock him out. And I think when he seen he could hit him, and it was really, really cute overhand left, wasn't it? And he kept working that all the time. And he was trying to,
I know I made the point to you, didn't I, regarding I didn't appreciate Conlon's power, and that obviously Lee Wood would never have dreamed that Conlon could have dropped him like that.
But as the fight went on, though, Carol, we were talking about it. As Lee Woods grew into the fight, the punch seemed to be less. Like, it seemed to have less an effect on him, didn't it? And whether that was Lee Wood's body getting adjusted to the punch shots, or whether it was the power fading of Conlon, or a mixture of both, it was a really interesting fight. But I think that the way that he knocked him down probably gave Conlon a kind of false hope that he could knock him out completely. So I think by the end of round 6, you could see that Conlon he's changed his style from the first 4 rounds, say, and it was actually, there were some rounds where it just looked to us and the gods, as we say, that he was actually doing more parrying and more blocking rather than actually coming forward. He was looking to clinch more, wasn't he? So he actually looked like he was gassing a little bit early, so to still stay in the fight, and actually do what he did was absolutely unbelievable. I think it was about round 8, I said to you, Carol, I think that Conlon's planting his feet a little bit more in this round. It almost looked like he'd taken, maybe the 7th off. The 8th, he looked a little bit different when he came out, and he looked like he was back to throwing power shots. But if we look at, say, rounds, I think it was 7, 8, 11, those were some of the best rounds I've ever seen live. In round 11, when you seen the way that Lee Wood was reacting, he looked like he was nearly going out there in round 11, didn't he? His body was actually looking like it was getting hurt by body shots. He looked to be sagging a little bit, but then he came back. And all through the fight, Lee Woods, I think, was throwing, like, as I've said before on the show, like punches in 1s and 2s. But in this fight, when he started to get Conlon on the ropes, he was unloading with 4, 5, 6 punches at a time on the ropes to Conlon's body. So, as we say at the time, you get caught up in the emotion of the fight, but these were all taking a massive toll. And ultimately, when you look at the finish as well, it was Conlon's kind of odd defence that led to him getting knocked out, wasn't it? He went back onto the ropes and he just had nowhere to go. And then, because he wasn't defending his chin, that punch that knocked him out was absolutely gorgeous by Lee Wood. So, for me, it's kind of, I think the manner that the fight ended in, it's just one of the greatest comeback victories in, British boxing history, I think.
A lot of that's been covered. A couple of things that I would like to say now. Let's not hear no more this that Lee was not world class for one, because Michael Conlon is a slippiest boxer. He's very elusive, isn't it? And would his work got out in that fight, because Conlon he's a lot better than I get. He's a lot better than I thought he was. That's all I'm going to say. Carries more power than I thought he did. And he was clearly hurting Woods in them exchanges. And he was outboxing Wood as well, to be honest. I don't really want Wood to have a rematch. We'll come on to who he fights next, but, it was just a brilliant fight. Yeah. And Conlon deserves credit for it. Obviously, he's all well, which is good. But let's not hear no more of this now that Lee Wood's not world class, because you don't do what he did to Michael Conlon and not be world class. I think that'll prove to be a very good victory as Michael Conlon goes on through his career, because he's going to have his day, Michael Conlon, isn't he, somewhere? He's a world champion in the making. So I think that win that Lee Wood had last night, in the course of time, will prove to be a very good victory.
Yeah.
Good evening, Matt.
Good evening, gents. You all right?
Yeah, great.
Do you want to give us your view on last night, Matt? I know you might have got a bit wet like me and Chris did with the beer thrown around and all that lot, but what were your thoughts on the fights?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just caught the end of Chris said there, like, just on the knockout punch and Conlan's defence, like, Conlan on the ropes last night was really, really good, I thought. And every time he just sort of just tucked his chin in behind that shoulder, and then everything was all, his head movement was all sort of like Wood's waist height sort of thing. And I think it was possibly the only time when he was up against the ropes that actually he was moving upright and moving that way. It was I've seen a couple of people on social media saying like, oh, you know, it wasn't much of a punch, he was just gas sort of thing. But you don't get that sort of reaction with, you know, with a light punch. I thought, I think I actually thought Conlan was, from round one, was going on the back, was happy to go onto the back foot as opposed to Wood taking the centre of the ring. I think Conlan was happier to fight on the back foot. And I agree that he said, you know, after the punch sort of thing, he did go looking for the knockout, and you would, because he had the chance there. And a couple of times Wood was really shaken. I think in the end, I mean, you talk about, you know, you can talk everything about tactics and this, that, and the other. Those two boys were going to punch themselves to a standstill last night, and we was at the weigh-in on Friday, obviously, and then we said, when Jordan Gill walked past, and we said, like, if you love, we love fighters, we admire fighters so much. And we was like saying, well, why do we admire fighters? And Jordan Gill walked past and we said, well, show somebody Jordan Gill's last fight, sort of thing. Yeah. And then last night, if you say to somebody, why do you love boxing? Yeah. Why do you love fighters? Watch that. That's why I love fighters. That's why I love boxing, sort of thing, because that was just, it was sensational.
Yeah.
It was sensational.
But we've seen the flip side of boxing as well last night, didn't we, in terms of that knockout, you know, because, you know, it was like there was until we actually heard how Michael Conlan was, you know, we were all worried, you know, and the way that he went down, and his light was just switched off, you know, and that punch, when you see it, someone's posted it on social media from a different angle, and when you see the punch actually landing, it's a tremendous shot, you know, and he just switches his lights out, and then he goes down very, very heavily. And from, you know, we couldn't see whether or not he'd landed on the apron, you know, or landed on the concrete with his head. So, you know, it was very worrying. So we kind of seen the best of boxing and almost the worst of boxing as well. But
also, Chris, regarding the referee, a couple of comments on social media, he might have been a bit slow in stepping in. He might have took a couple of shots. I don't buy that, but a couple of comments.
No. I think it happened so swiftly. I would guarantee you probably about 60% of the crowd didn't even see that knockout shot landing. Yeah, it came to a very, very swift conclusion.
Chris, I've heard a couple of comments pointing the finger at Lee Wood, saying, why did he not stop throwing shots when Conlan was out? Well, he was in the middle of a combination. Yeah. You don't just stop throwing punches in the middle of a combination, because he wouldn't have known in the middle of that flurry of punches that Conlan was out cold.
Yeah.
So just some ridiculous comments from people that really just do not understand.
Yeah, it's not his job to stop punching, is it? It's a referee's job. It's a referee's job to step in. It's not Lee Wood's job. He's, you know, ridiculous.
And also seen someone commenting as well about, you know, Lee Wood's celebration. You know, Michael Conlan's lying on the floor and he's on his knees and Ben Davidson's all over him. You know, what we've got to remember is this is a fight. It's an emotional environment. The minute Lee Wood stopped him, of course he's going to go on the floor, because he's going to feel totally like adulation, because he's just stopped a guy in the fight of his life. But where Lee Wood came into his own last night was the minute he realised, because he walked over to the side of the ring, noticed that Conlan was probably unconscious at that time, in need of medical help, and he went and he put his head on his hands on his head, and then he went like that to the crowd and said, just calm down. And he showed his real class, you know, by just trying to make sure that everybody wasn't celebrating, that nobody was going over the top. So, you know, Lee Wood will have my eternal respect for what he did last night, and actually bringing that crowd back down to a level and just actually showing an awareness of the situation when he's got such emotion running through him. So I think both fighters did themselves proud, and it was just a tremendous fight.
Let's bring Sean in first, Andy. Let's just bring Sean in. Good evening, Sean.
Hello, boys. You all right?
You want to give us your thoughts on the fight, Sean?
Just first and foremost, what a great fight it was. Hey, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I thought Conlan was just going to sort of maybe go on his bite the last round to secure the win. I never in a million years thought that Woods would do that to him. I think I had Conlan 8-3 up going into the last. I had him with a handy lead, but I mean, I still can't believe how League would pull it out at the end. Really, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Go on, Andy.
I just wanted to mention what Chris had said about Lee Wood calming the crowd down. From where we were, I mean, people aren't stupid. They know that half the people that turn up to these shows are people that are out on the lash. And there was a lot of that last night. There was a lot of that around us, football related and all of that. So it probably took the crowd a little bit longer than it would have under other circumstances to realise what was going on. So I don't want anyone that was watching it live on TV to think that the crowd, the Nottingham crowd, have got no respect, or the Nottingham people have got no respect, because that's not the case.
No.
You know, it's just the fact that a lot of them had a lot of beer.
Yeah.
They saw the fight unfold the way it did, and it was just exhilarating to them that Lee Wood had got the stoppage, and they just went crazy celebrating, as you do.
And what I would say as well, Andy, is Eddie Hearn's tweeted out, and so is Frank Smith, my new mate Frank Smith, regarding the special atmosphere in Nottingham. And it's always mentioned that Nottingham creates a special atmosphere, and that was only the arena with 10,000 fans. Imagine what the City ground would be like. So, although I know what people are saying, the crowd might have been celebrating a little bit too much, we didn't witness that. Once Lee Wood started waving his arms to people to calm down, people acted respectfully.
Yeah.
So I hope that came over on the TV.
Yeah, totally, and I think that's got to be said, and everybody in the corners, there was no celebrations from the Ben Davidson type camp. Again, he was very respectful. I was watching him at one point, making sure everybody was calming down. But, I think, and even Michael Conlan, when he was taken out, got a round of applause in the stretcher, and we were all genuinely worried about Conlan at that point, because we really just didn't know what he was going to be in. But I think, if we go back to the fight, really did take some turns, didn't it? I think we went through every emotion in that fight, last night. And, from Conlan coming out in the first 4 rounds and probably taking it in the first 4 rounds. And, we were saying, does Wood have the ability to actually change this game plan? Can he actually start to slow Conlan down? And, from start to finish, Lee Wood probably just did the same thing. He came forward all night, throwing the same combinations, throwing the same punches. But he was willing to walk through everything that Conlan threw at him to get there. And, man, this guy has got the biggest balls I've ever seen live in a fighter. He took some beating there last night. And, to come out with the victory, I don't think there's been 5 minutes today that's passed where I've not thought about that fight, and just thought to myself, that was the best thing that I've seen live. It really, it was that type of night. You'll never forget it.
No. And Sean, I don't know how it came across on TV, but I hope it gave an essence of how good the fight was on TV as well. I know Carl Froch was doing commentary when I watched it back.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Carl Froch was quite balanced, wasn't it?
He was.
Yeah. I think I put it on social media. Actually, he was actually much more better on DAZN than he was on Sky Sports. I think the duo of him and Darren Barker were very well together, I thought. From obviously you guys were there live. Did you get the sense of Conlan was badly hurt when it happened? I don't know how you saw it.
Yeah, he went all limp. He went all limp, Sean. It just wasn't a great look,
It was the way he went. It's the way he fell backwards, and he went head first back. He went head down, head first. There was somebody had tweeted a video of actually from behind Conlan, probably within that sort of like ringside area, and his brother, who was sat next to Eddie Hearn, sort of just makes it to him in time just to sort of almost break the fall. So it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But just a quick one. What I'll say is on the we've obviously, and you guys obviously, we've spoken about what we think about the British Boxing Board of Control, recently. Conlon was seen to, medical attention was there very, very quickly.
It was.
Pathways were cleared for him out of there. And, British Boxing Board of Control have got it's widely recognised they've got the best medical conditions in place probably around the globe sort of thing. And that was evident last night.
Oh, they're the best in the world. We've got the best medical care in the world.
Yeah.
And we could see that because we were watching it, Sean, unfold, because we're all four of us were actually very close last night. So myself, Carol and Andy were sitting together. Matt was with his father and his friend 2 rows in front of us. But the side of the arena that we were at was actually the side where Conlon went through the ropes. So we could actually see all unfolding. So what we could actually see there, we were getting worried because the medics were very, very slow in bringing him onto the stretcher. They were making sure that they didn't lift him, very quickly. It was all done very, very slow and it looked all very measured. But I think that the other point is by the time that we'd left the arena, the ambulance was just pulling out when I left you guys. So, he was on the road to hospital probably within about 10, 15 minutes of him actually being taken out of the main bit of the arena. So, that golden hour, the British Boxing Board of Control did their job, and thankfully it wasn't as serious as we all thought, initially. But it was a fantastic atmosphere as well. We've got to say that there was a lot of, as we say, football crowd, but, there was a lot of knowledgeable boxing fans and, it was just a great boxing event, really, wasn't it?
If we're honest, Chris, where we were, for the main, people behaved themselves, didn't they? And there's a good atmosphere. There's only the odd few, like anywhere where you go for a sporting event, there was the odd few that, just misbehaved a little bit.
That's always the same anywhere, isn't it? It's a few that sometimes spoil it for the many, but, if there was 10,000 there, you're always going to get 9,800 behaving themselves, and so that is, we can't really talk about the crowd and things like that too much, it's a fight that we're here to talk about, and it's a fight that's going to last a lifetime.
Yeah.
Have any of you watched it back yet on the Zone?
Yeah.
What I found quite interesting, I don't know who his name is, but one of Adam Booth's seconds in the corner, from about round 9 onwards, he was telling Conlon to stay off the ropes. He gave him quite a rollicking about that. And I think if he did, he may have won, because it was only when he was on the ropes where he was really getting cool and put under pressure, really.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Sean, because even from where we were sitting, when Conlon was on the ropes, he was actually managing to evade a lot of punches. Now, on TV, sometimes it looks like the punches are landing, but his head movement, his body movement, you could see him moving from the hips. And, there was a lot of times in early rounds where Wood got him on where he wasn't actually landing as far as we could see. But as the rounds progressed and Wood started to work that body, he started to catch up with him. And then, as we say, probably around 5 and 6, me and Carol said to each other, "Look at Conlon. He's really gassed, and he was really holding, wasn't he? If there was ever a clinch opportunity, he would take it, but he wouldn't do that in the first couple of rounds." So,
but watching back on TV, Chris, Lee Wood was whipping them body shots in one set, and whereas we thought they weren't landing, and we was concerned, actually some of that, like Andy said, some of them were actually getting through.
Yeah,
I just want to touch on a comment in the sidebar from Mr. Burns. He's simply put, Wood got lucky. I don't know what fight you were watching, mate. Yeah, he had some troubled times, but he didn't get lucky. Especially from round 7 onwards, there was times Wood was throwing loads and loads and loads of great body shots. Not all of them were hitting the body. A lot of them were hitting Conlon's arms. But it all takes effect, and it all works to Wood's effect down the stretch.
Yeah. That's really disingenuous towards Lee. That is that's
completely.
You don't get out from a knockdown in round 1 and go another 11 rounds and get lucky. You know what I mean? You take your licks and you take your punches. That was a world-class performance by both fighters last night. Absolute world-class.
Completely agree. And for Wood to still have his power right at the very end of the fight, after that, such an heavy knockdown and the way the first few rounds went, it shows you just how dangerous Wood is as a fighter.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Well, like I said, I don't want to hear this is not world class anymore. I don't know what more the kid can do.
No, he can't. Exactly. Exactly.
I think if we were being critical, we could probably say at certain points he didn't change his game plan, but then ultimately he's just proven that he didn't need to, you know. So he stuck to it and he did what he needed to do. You know, I think.
So sorry, Chris. Another comment in the side is from John McSmith, who says Conlon failed to finish when he had his man hurt, and he hurt him more than once.
Well, I think what he's got to remember is the bell went, didn't he? You know, and then, you know, if the bell hadn't went in round one, then, you know, we may well have been in a situation where the referee could have actually just waved it off. You know,
Could have, Chris, isn't it a case of could have, would have, should have? It just didn't transpire like that, did it?
Exactly. It didn't, and he tried. You know, because if we were watching it on television or whether we were watching it in the arena, Conlon tried to take him out in the second round over and over again. You know, and he threw out his own boxing and went for power punching. So, you know, you can't turn around and say he should have hurt him and taken him out. He tried.
I think you got to give Wood credit as well there, because there was times where he was visibly hurt to the body, and then middle rounds. I think it was around between 7 and 9 maybe, and they traded body shots, and you could see Wood pull his arms into his rib cage and everything like that. He was almost happy to get punched in the face at that point. Yeah, because there was a couple of times, and I sort of I've watched a couple of interviews and press conferences afterwards, and he said, you know, there was on a few occasions he was hurt to the body. That was evident as well. And I think, again, you know, one of you said it earlier, like balls of steel sort of thing. Like it was just an old-fashioned case of bite down on your gum shield, take your licks and keep going forward. And that's what he did.
So comments in sidebar, Cornell XX1, good evening, said Lara versus Wood next, anyone? Well, the next segment's going to be who Wood should fight next, and we'll save that one till then.
Again, in the sidebar, Joe has put problem Wood's got now is the other governing bodies won't allow him to unify with the regular belt. He's right. So, in my opinion, and we're going to go on to this, but in my opinion, Santa Cruz must be made to fight Wood now. It has to happen next. Santa Cruz, by the way, Joe, if you don't know, has had a belt in this division that he's not defended for over 3 years. So that's not Lee Wood's fault. The fact of the matter is the WBA should have stripped him, and this fight against Conlon should have been made for the WBA super title. So you know, it's easy to throw a cheap shot at Lee Wood saying, well, he can't unify because it's only a regular belt. It's not his fault. Santa Cruz hasn't fought for 3 years.
Well, he's coming back down into... He's coming back down, he's saying, Santa Cruz.
Yeah,
so let's see.
Though, Carl. He keeps on saying that just to keep hold of the title. It's wrong, mate.
But suddenly Santa Cruz has got a live opponent there in front of him with Lee Wood, you know, and maybe the money fight, you know, could now be Lee Wood because he did get paid well for that last night. It was a good purse there, and you know, we don't know how it'll all unfold in a couple of weeks with Josh Warrington and Martinez. Or, you know, I think we can all guess Josh Warrington will probably win that and win it quite handily. You know, but you know, Santa Cruz and Wood now actually begins to have an appeal. You know, so
so Joe agrees. He said he's not knocking Wood at all. Yeah, we know you're not, Joe. We think he's a joke. The Santa Cruz scenario really is a joke.
But you know, let's forget the titles anyway. Just now, you know, this is a case of, you know, a fight being bigger than any title, isn't it? It didn't matter what that was there last night. You know, we had a fight last night, which is going to be one which, as we said before, everybody's going to remember. Let's forget the strap and just think about where do they go next, or you know.
So next comment, Mr. Burns is just on the wind up. So you know so who do we think Lee will jump in next? So we'll come to Matt first. Matt, who do you reckon is going to jump in with?
I think the obvious fight is obviously the winner of Martinez and Warrington, provided the you know, the belt situation can be worked out, sort of thing. If that is the case, it's the fight that makes the most sense. I mean, could you imagine Warrington Wood in this country as a unification fight or whatever it may be? I mean, it's too big to turn down. And I think, look, Warrington could go and win that fight. We all think that Warrington's going to beat Martinez, and Warrington could win that fight really, like you said, really handily. But I think Wood would go in as favourite. I think Wood would go in as favourite to that fight. I mean, realistically, would the Santa Cruz fight, could that come off? I mean, I don't even know who he's with actually anymore in terms of promotion
PBC.
stable. So
He's with PBC.
PBC. Yeah. I think the one that makes the most sense is the winner of Warrington and Martinez. So
yeah. But would we see a rematch though? Would we? What's your thoughts on the rematch? First of all,
we don't want to see it. We don't definitely want to see it. But I think Conlon was is obviously his mandatory challenger. He, I understand the clamour for a rematch because it was a fantastic fight. Conlon was ahead on the cards going into the last round. He does deserve the rematch. I think also though that Wood has actually earned his chance to do what he wants to do.
Agreed.
That's whether that's Warrington Martinez at the City Ground, Santa Cruz in Vegas, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think he's earned the right to say what he wants to do. And then look, let's say he unifies against winner Warrington Martinez. Why first defence couldn't be against Conlon?
Yeah.
Potentially. I know there's lots of things to work out, but
nah. I think you make an excellent point there. I think if they actually said let's clamber for an immediate rematch, it's doing Woods a disrespect. Well, does that mean they're just going to keep lining him up until he gets beat? It's ridiculous. Yeah. He won the fight fair and square. So, I'm with you, Matt. I think he's earned the right to actually pick and choose his next opponent and, make as much money as possible and see where he goes.
Sean?
Yeah, I think it will be the George Warrington. Really, I don't think he'll be jumping through rings to fight Conlon again. I really don't. So yeah, or the other way, I suppose, if somehow Conlon gets the winner of Martinez and then he can fight Wood in the unification fight. I mean, that would be massive, wouldn't it? If they could maneuver that somehow.
Yeah.
And what do you reckon?
Well, first and foremost, they need to sort out the belt situation. It's disgraceful, and if that holds Lee Wood back, it's not right, mate. It's not right when the other champion hasn't fought for that belt for 3 years. The WBA need to wake up and smell the coffee a little bit and realise what's going on in this division. They need to realise that all the big fights for this division are in the UK, and they're not going to get made. Probably not going to get made if that super title's just left sat there collecting dust, collecting cobwebs, and Santa Cruz can just go off and do whatever he wants and fight people at other weights and still keep a title. It's just not on, mate. It leaves a bit of a bad taste after that fight last night. It deserved to be for the super title, and as Chris has said, it was about more than the title last night. But in the cold light today, you can't but think that the IBF have already said when Warrington was the IBF champion and he wanted to fight Zhu Can, they wouldn't make the fight because it was a regular WBA belt that Zhu Can held at the time, which is why Warrington dropped the title, if I'm right, Chris.
Yeah, and that's the kind of irony of it all, because IBF have done it before. When Karl Froch fought Mikkel Kessler, that was a regular belt versus full title. You know, so they pick and choose, what they do. And you make a great point there. They need to realise that, the division is in the UK, and Mendoza, hopefully the WBA should use this as an opportunity just to actually clean up that division, because he's promised us to do that previously, that he'll clean up the division. And, scrap the super title if you want, and just give us one champion back at the weight WBA and make it Lee Wood.
I mean, if he's going to fight Santa Cruz next, it's either going to be a shed load of money to get him over to America, or they have to pay Santa Cruz a shed load of money to come over to the City Ground.
Yeah,
I do think Santa Cruz versus Wood does sell out the City Ground. I think Wood's got people underestimate Wood's following. They really do. What does the City Ground hold? 30,000, give or take, somebody with floor seats, and I'm guessing.
Yeah, something like that.
So I'm confident in saying Lee Wood sells out of the City Ground for that against Santa Cruz, because I think his profile's massive, not only in Nottingham now, but in the UK.
Yeah.
I would go that route. I would pay Eddie Hearn, back him, and pay whatever it's going to cost to get Santa Cruz over here and clear it up that way.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, there's nothing stopping the unifications. Then there's nothing stopping the unification. People can't hide behind the fact that it's a regular title and we don't recognise it and all that bollocks. You know, it is what it is. You know, if he goes and defeats Santa Cruz, there's no way anybody can say anything other than, okay, let's have the rematch. Let's have the unification. Sorry.
I think the one thing as well, and you know, it's rich coming for me because I'm like do stuff with an organisation body, you know. But you know, fighters make titles, you know, and that's what we've got. There's too many now, and the proliferation of titles. You know, fighters make titles, you know. So Lee Wood's now earned the opportunity to pick and choose who he fights next, and if he needs to give up his belt to take on the winner of Warrington Martinez, he may well do that, you know. It's all I want now is for him to get his recognition that he's you know, in there in the world's elite there within that weight division, you know, and he will get it.
You make a good point. I've never thought about him dropping that belt to fight Warrington or Martinez. That's quite a good point.
Why not? We've seen champions do it before, you know, that they'll drop a belt and just go on. You know, there's a couple of comments in the sidebar about, you know, super champions. Did they have super champions back when Froch fought Kessler? It was actually brought in for Lennox Lewis because Lennox Lewis was the undisputed champion at the time, and the WBA brought it back in then so that he wouldn't have to face mandatories of all the regulatory bodies. So, you know, it was kind of brought in to help the sport, but it's kind of went the opposite way.
And also, Lee Wood deserves to earn some good paydays now. He's paid his dues to the sport. So if that means dropping the belt, drop the belt. If it's going to be a big payday with Warrington, just drop it.
Yeah.
Just you said there about talking about like his, you know, his recognition and everything. One thing I have noticed today, with the exception of social media, with the fight being on DAZN, actually the coverage in the mainstream, and I say mainstream, you know, people don't. There's not much. There won't be anything, obviously, like, you know, newspapers these days, but there's only like a little caption that goes across on Sky Sports News, the BBC News website. You know, it was right down on there, sort of thing. Like last night's fight should be getting more attention than what it has done.
Yeah.
And that's my only. That's my only sort of fear, is that potentially
gone under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that was scandalous last night because after I left the lads last night, they went off in the beer and I drove back down to Chorley. So I had a 2-hour drive. By the time I got back to Chorley, nothing about the fight was on Sky at all because I was trying to check on whether or not Michael Conlan was okay. Yeah. You know, so by the time I got back to the house, it was 2:00 in the morning and there was still not a word on Sky about Conlan. And I thought that was disgraceful, you know.
That's Sky all over, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just a word, guys. I just want to put a word in here. So Michael Conlan gets taken to hospital. By all accounts, he was released fairly quickly. But he put a tweet out from his hospital bed. I don't know if you've seen this. He put a tweet out from his hospital bed showing absolute class and respect towards Lee Wood. You know, congratulating him for the win, congratulating him for the shot that knocked him out. I mean, I've knocked Michael Conlan and his brother a little bit for being gobshites, let's put it, for want of a better word, in the build-up to this. And that was all, obviously, that was all about wind-up. That was all about trying to get under Lee Wood's skin. But when
to sell the fight. And to sell the fight.
Yeah. But when it comes down to it, in the cold light of day, what class and respect that was from Michael Conlan. Because he could have cried about it. You know, he could have said, "Oh, I was winning the fight easy. It was a lucky punch." Like, how many times do you hear that in boxing from other boxers? All the time. When they think they've been hard done to, or they want to get a rematch, or you know, or they cry about things not going right for him in the fight, and the ref want on my side, blah 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 blah. Yeah, nothing from that from Michael Conlan. I've seen 2 or 3 interviews with him. I've seen tweets from his training camp team, and they've all been completely respectful. So, props to Michael Conlan and his team for the way they've reacted to this.
but they know they were part of something special last night as well. And in defeat, he grew. You know, there was, and it's a cliche, isn't it? Boxing sometimes, you know, like we throw cliches out around, but genuinely last night, there wasn't a real loser. You know, the sport came on leaps and bounds in terms of the respect and the fight and the audience that it got. But both of these guys, you know, they've elevated themselves. Then the finish of the fight as well elevated it from a great fight to a super fight, you know. And as I say, there's not been 5 minutes where I've not really thought about the fight. And, you know, I'm sitting thinking about, we all talk about Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo. That was the British version of it last night. You know, we had one guy, you know, almost out on his feet. Then he comes back and wins the fight. You know, that was their version of that fight. You know, it's going to be probably the best British fight of the year. And, you know, and it deserves its place probably in the top 20, the best British fights of all time.
I mean, in terms of the build-up with Jamie and Michael Conlan, it's all pantomime 9 times out of 10, isn't it? It's to sell the fights. That pretends there's a bit of needle between them. Inevitably, there's a bit of needle because they're cutting weight and, you know, they're going into a fight at the end of the day. But there's clearly, obviously, respect there during the build-up as well for me. You know, yeah. But obviously it's a business, so yeah. You know you got to sell tickets, haven't you?
And you're never going to go into a weigh-in or into an interview situation saying, "Yeah, I'm going to get my arse handed to me," are you? Of course, you're going to turn around and say, you know, like I'm going to beat him, I'm going to knock him, I'm going to school him. That's boxing. You've got to get in there with self-belief. And both these guys, you know, I bet you both these guys will grow in the next fight because of what happened. Like Wood now knows he's still got the ability to turn a fight around, and 2 world-class performances in a row where he managed to get a 12th round stoppage. You know, he's now going to know that for 36 minutes he can fight and still has that ability to turn a fight round regardless of what's going on.
It's a bit like the Deontay Wilder comment, isn't it? You need to be perfect for 12 rounds. I need to be perfect for 1 second.
Absolutely.
Guys, I go as far as to say that I think Michael Conlan beats anyone else in the division on that performance. Yeah.
One of the things that we were talking about last night was, you know, he was trying to set traps for Leigh Wood to come in all night, you know, and I like me and Carol were talking about this at one point. You know, we were saying, watch what he's doing. He's actually trying to draw Wood onto that left hand again, you know, and he was just positioning Wood because Wood was just coming forward. So Conlan was just bringing his own left hand down just ever so slightly, trying to pull him in just so he could land the big overhand, you know. So Conlan was so cute with what he did all night. His foot movement was good. But when he started to gas, you know, and he did gas fairly quickly, I think, in the fight, from about 6 rounds onward, he had to change his style. But he did change his style. But the one thing that really shocked us all was he actually stood and traded.
Yeah.
And I think in that was at the 8th round and the 9th round and the 11th round, you know, he actually stood toe for toe. And certainly they were standing at one point, landing huge body shots against each other. You know, no one.
Now in the sidebar, you can see obviously someone's asking, is it a better fight than Gomez versus Alex Harper? Now, he might have told us once, twice, or about 1,000 times, Chris, that you was at that fight.
Yeah, it was.
I think it's only right that you take that one away.
Yeah, it was.
It
was a better fight than that, and I think. After Alex started, and Alex, as we all know, boxed at Leith Victoria. I used to train at my gym, which was Sparta in Edinburgh, so I know Alex. You know, after about the 4th round in that fight, because it was only a 5-round fight, Gomez was in the ascendancy. You know, so there wasn't the same twists and turns in that fight where, you know, Alex actually was able to come back with Gomez. Yeah, both of them were hurt really badly, you know, but when Gomez took Arthur out, he wasn't able to get up and turn the table around. Wood did. So for me, yeah, this fight kind of eclipsed Gomez and Arthur.
Yeah,
it's probably the best fight I've been at live.
There's been a lot of comments regarding Mauricio Lara. Now, I wouldn't put it past Leeward to jump in with him because he's got balls of steel. But ideally, I wouldn't want to jump in with him, I'll be honest.
You don't need to at this stage, Carl.
That would be a war. That would be a war.
Lee needs to concentrate on fighting champions. Champion, he needs to fight champions. Neil's put, including Maurice Lara. I think that might be as an answer to my question of Michael Conlan beats everyone, but I was talking about champions. He beats all the other champions for me. He could win a world title in his next fight, Michael Conlan.
Yeah, but I think the one thing which is now going to make Woods a really marketable fighter is he still was beatable, even though he won last night, wasn't he? You know, he still is, you know, in some respects quite one-dimensional. But
that's why it's exciting. is
Yeah,
an exciting fighter.
Yeah, totally. And what we seen Lara did, not last weekend, but the weekend before that uppercut that he did and threw in the way he destroyed that guy was frightening. So he's a major player in the division, regardless of whether he's got a belt or not.
Yeah.
And that's why I give Warrington props, because Warrington wants him again, doesn't it? You know, I think Warrington needs to right that wrong. So that'll be interesting.
Do you think can you see Warrington offering Lara the fight if he comes through this fight he's got?
Yeah, in a word, I think if the Wood-Warrington fight don't happen, if he beats Martinez, I think he's told Eddie Hearn he wants Lara. Eddie Hearn said that because Eddie Hearn thinks he's mad. But you know,
you can only admire it, can't you?
But he's a warrior, Inter. So he wants to run that right.
Yeah. Again, why do you love fighters? That's why.
Yeah. It was funny, we referenced Josh Warrington last night, didn't we, Carol? Because we mentioned between us the first round of Warrington and Frampton, when Frampton said he'd never been hit that hard, and it was almost that case with Conlon and Wood last night. Wood probably didn't think Conlon had that ability to hurt him, but once he readjusted and once he managed to get himself through those early rounds, he managed to stand up to it. So, there were some parallels for the kind of Warrington-Frampton fight within there. But I think the one thing as well, which we've kind of overlooked is, people will talk about Lee Wood, but what other fighter have we seen actually been that badly hurt, in recent times and actually readjust himself, over the first 4 rounds to come back again? That was a phenomenal mental performance as well as physical.
Yeah, and he's 33, so he's going to want the big fights. He's not going to hang around now, is he?
Yeah.
He'll probably be out twice more this year, I'd imagine, summer and winter. And the next one's going to be the City Ground. Eddie Hearn's banging on about it, isn't it? So, for me, summertime, when Forest have finished about 8th in the league, when the season's done, there's plenty of time to get that turf.
Once we spank Liverpool on Sunday, we're going up.
You're going to be very upset this time next week. But anyway, let's get back on the boxing. So it's going to have to be... if I had put money on it now, I'm going for Warrington, the winner of that fight.
Against Martinez?
I think Warrington will win, so I think it will play out that Warrington will come and fight. I know he fights majority in Leeds, but, he'll be offered a shed load of money. And can you imagine that atmosphere?
Yeah.
When you've got the Leeds fans travelling down to the City Ground now, that's a naughty little atmosphere, that is.
It's one of those fights, though, and I know that we don't want to do any disrespect to people. I'm not even sure I'd want to go because of that kind of football contingency at it.
I've been to a few Forest Leeds games and it's tasty, to put it politely.
How was it split yesterday between the Irish and the Nottingham crowd?
Yeah,
it was very well managed, Sean. There was no trouble at all. The arena has 2 entrances, and the Conlon fans and the Irish fans went in one entrance, which is around one side of the building, and then all the Lee Woods fans and their ticket sales went in the other side of the building. So there was virtually no interaction before the fight. Very little interaction after the fight, even though obviously the Irish were staying in Nottingham, so they were drinking in the city centre. We saw quite a few after, but because it wasn't by then, obviously it gets dispersed, so there wasn't the kind of big crowd mentality of egging each other on, and it would just end up being a good night. So yeah, it was very well managed the way it worked out. You can't really do the same thing in a football ground.
You'd want to put like fans in. If it was at the City Ground, for example, you'd almost like want to set up an away end like you do at a football match. But you can't sell tickets that way for a boxing match. You know what I mean? It
don't work like that, does it?
It would be very, very hard to
It's difficult, Matt. I mean, me and Andy have been to Bramall Lane to watch Kelbrook fight, and you had George Groves on the card as well. And you can't separate the Chelsea lot from the Sheffield United lot.
No, I agree. It'd be difficult. It would,
I think with that one, I think you'd probably try. I think they would need to try and do it. But,
the thing is, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that both fighters are tied very heavily to the football club.
Yeah.
Lee Wood's a massive Forest fan. Warrington's a massive Leeds fan, and they're not going to get away from that. But also, that's where a lot of their fan base is from.
Yeah.
So they can't really distance themselves because that's where the ticket sellers are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing I would say, Sean, about the Irish last night, and I don't know how you guys felt, we never talked about it at the time, but, even in the undercard, they were actually relatively quiet. Like you could hear them in bursts, couldn't we? But like they had one of their Irish fighters fighting directly on the main support. They were very quiet throughout that fight. And after Conlon got knocked out, they dispersed very quickly. The Nottingham guys around very much for maybe the next 20 minutes or so. But the Irish fans, when we looked over, had actually dispersed really, really quickly, and their section was almost empty. By the time that Michael Conlon had been taken out in his stretcher.
You'll have to come up for the City Ground fight, Sean.
Yeah.
We'll get you. Matt will pay for your ticket. He told me the other night.
Yeah, all right.
I would have thought that the old Irish fans would have been more buoyant with the rugby result in the afternoon as well that they had, because they gave England the weekend, didn't they?
I mean, I've got to admit, like Chris described it, you heard them in bursts, but it wasn't a constant raucous noise by any stretch, to be honest.
No, the only time they went, they almost blew the roof off, was when Wood got knocked down in the first round. I thought the roof was going to explode, if I'm honest. Because I think they thought that was it. I think they thought it obviously was such a bad knockdown that they thought that was it. Fight was over, and after that point, once Lee Wood started getting back into it, they quietened down fairly quickly. Yeah.
I wonder if we're kind of psychoanalyzing that then. Someone like Carol Frampton or Ricky Hatton, they're kind of many of the people, aren't they? They'll have a drink with the guys afterwards. Conlon sometimes comes across as quite aloof. I wonder if like the guys were supporting him because he was Irish, but they maybe don't buy into the personality as much. Because I don't know, just throwing it out for debate.
I'm not sure about that. I think this kind of bravado that Michael Conlon and his brother were putting on, I think that was exactly what it is. It was a bit of a put on. I really don't. Reading between the lines and the way he's acted afterwards, I don't think he's like that at all. I think he is genuinely down to earth.
I think he's a nice kid who was, like, say, putting a pantomime on,
Yeah. People have always said he's a decent kid, actually. They've always said he's a nice lad. And I think Bob Arum said he was really nice when he signed him. And, that's what he thought could actually make him into a superstar, because he was a kind of man of the people. But no, I just found Irish last night just a little bit, just a little bit muted at points. I thought they would be on it for like a long, long time and chanting away. Maybe they'd blown their load at the rugby.
Yeah. Or the Guinness was really bad in Nottingham, so you didn't get them up for it.
Yeah, it was taking a while to get served at the bars anyway last night, wasn't it?
Yeah. So coming up to the 58-minute mark, so we'll bring it to a close, guys. So Matt, thank you very much for joining. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. Sean, cheers for joining, fella. Chris, as ever, cheers for coming on, and cheers everyone in the sidebar. Thank you very much for your comments. Reminder that we go live on Thursday at 7 p.m. I don't know if you've seen the video when Lee Wood beat Zhu Cam, but we normally put a little video on, don't we, Andy, to see us out when Lee Wood's inevitably won another fight. So that's what we're going to do tonight, should it work. So goodbye from me. See you on Thursday, 7 p.m. And this one's for you, Lee.
Barriers, the taller I become, the farther you take my rights away, the the faster I will run. You can deny me, you can decide to turn your face away. No matter, 'cause there's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, there's something inside so strong. Oh, something inside so strong. The more you refuse to hear my voice, the louder I will sing. You hide behind walls of Jericho. Our lies will come tumbling. Deny my place in time. You squander wealth that's mine. My light will shine so brightly it will blind you. 'Cause there's something inside so strong, so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, there's something inside so strong.